Milford is a charming coastal city located in Connecticut, United States. Situated on the Long Island Sound, it offers picturesque views and a vibrant community. Covering an area of just over 25 square miles, it has a population of over 50,000 people. Known for its beautiful beaches, Milford attracts visitors and residents alike who appreciate its scenic landscapes and waterfront activities. The city boasts a rich history dating back to colonial times with a blend of historic architecture and modern amenities. The people of Milford would never know that a tragedy was about to befall them in 2022. But first, let's uncover the layers of her past. Julie Minogue entered the world on July 19, 1982, in the charming town of Goshen, New York. She was blessed with loving parents, Gerald J. Minogue and Sandra Barish Dopper, who nourished her alongside her two siblings, sister Allison Barati Corcoran and brother Peter Gerald Minogue. Growing up, Julie thrived academically, attending the esteemed Monroe-Woodbury schools and later graduating from Monroe-Woodbury High School. She further pursued her education at Orange County Community College, expanding her knowledge and embracing new experiences along the way. After college, Julie Minogue became a devoted medical assistant at Connecticut Coastal Obstetrics Gynecology and found joy in various aspects of her life. She embraced an active lifestyle, regularly engaging in running and walking to keep herself energized. However, her true passion lay in being a mother to her two sons, Nicholas Keith Turner and Sean Michael Turner. The details about her marriage and husband are unknown at this point. Julie's dedication and love as a single mother were remarkable, shaping the strong bond shared among them. Julie Minogue found love once again in 2017 and got into a relationship with a man from Roxbury named Ewan Anthony DeWitt. Together, they welcomed a son in 2019 named Luke Anthony Minogue into their lives. However, as time passed, difficulties arose in their relationship, which led Julie to make the decision to leave Ewan in 2021. She moved with her sons to a condo on Salem Walk in Milford, and their well-being remained her top priority. In 2022, Nicholas, the eldest son, was 21 years old and had bravely served his country in the Coast Guard, while Sean, at 17 years old, was a vibrant young man thriving as a high school senior. Her son with Ewan, Luke, was 3 and a bright light in their household. Julie herself was 40, and all seemed well for her and her 3 boys. But tragedy was waiting just around the corner. Late at night on December 6, 2022, 17-year-old Sean Minogue was startled awake by chilling screams. He didn't wake up at the first noise and dismissed it, thinking that it could just be echoes from the neighborhood. But the cries grew louder and more urgent, and he realized something was terribly wrong. Concerned about his mother's safety, Sean rushed down the stairs. As he descended, amidst the darkness, he caught a glimpse of a chilling scene. A man wielding an axe and his mother lying on the floor, her body drenched in blood. In the midst of the chaos, Sean heard the haunting words, "You didn't believe me," ringing in his ears. In a panic, the teenager raced upstairs and swiftly locked the door, determined to keep himself safe. He dialed 911 and urgently reported the horrifying scene that had unfolded before him. Determined to provide an extra layer of protection, he quickly placed a sturdy chair behind the locked door. With his heart pounding, he opened his window, desperately reaching out for help. Within minutes, police officers arrived and entered the house, but the teenager, gripped by fear, leapt out of the window. That's when he heard Milford PD shouts and realized it was not the intruder. Eventually, the authorities found the courageous teen and ensured his safety. In a devastating discovery, the police entered the kitchen to find Julie Minogue lying in a pool of blood on the floor. Her face and skull had been injured by multiple deep cuts. A chilling sight awaited them as they spotted a large axe resting on the stove nearby, carrying evidence of the horrific crime. Meanwhile, in the living room, Julie's young son, Luke, who was 3 years old, sat on the couch completely stunned and unresponsive. Not a tear nor a word escaped him, as if he was frozen in shock. The officer stayed by his side and offered him comfort and support until additional officers arrived at the scene. Following her tragic demise, Julie's body was carefully transported to the Connecticut office of the Chief Medical Examiner for a thorough examination. After conducting a meticulous autopsy, the medical examiner determined the cause of her death to be the chopped wounds and blunt impact injuries on the head, torso, and extremities. The detailed findings provided crucial evidence regarding the nature of the attack, shedding light on the tragic circumstances surrounding her untimely demise. As the police took custody of the axe found on the gas stove, they meticulously combed through every inch of the area, determined to uncover any potential evidence that could lead them closer to the perpetrator. Inside the house, they embarked on an extensive search, carefully examining each room for any clues that could shed light on the heinous crime. The commotion attracted the attention of concerned neighbors who gathered nearby. The atmosphere was tense as the community was eager to support the investigation in any way they could. Amidst the growing crowd, a helpful neighbor came forward with an unexpected piece of evidence: Ring camera footage from outside his house at Long Meadow Complex. The police eagerly seized the opportunity, hoping that the footage might hold a crucial clue. As they watched the footage, they witnessed an unsettling sight: an individual walking with an axe in hand closely resembling the description provided by Sean. The discovery sent a wave of anticipation through the investigators as they realized they might have found a significant lead. The police began to look into who this man with the axe could be. That very day, December 6, 2022, a crucial breakthrough took place when a concerned woman called the police, recounting a chilling phone call from her son. In her trembling voice, she shared the shocking revelation that her son had just called her and said that he had killed his girlfriend. The urgency in her words spurred an immediate response from law enforcement. Determined to unravel the truth, they swiftly tracked down the woman and engaged her in conversation. It was then revealed that the man responsible for this ominous confession was none other than Ewan DeWitt, the 42-year-old man who was once in a relationship with Julie. With this vital information in hand, the police dialed Ewan's number, hoping to engage him in a crucial conversation. However, their efforts were met with resistance as Ewan abruptly hung up the call. So it was important for the police to look into Ewan's history, which they believed could provide them the vital information needed to proceed further. Born in the town of Roxbury in 1979, Ewan Anthony DeWitt possessed a diverse range of interests and pursuits. As a talented athlete, he pursued his passion for ice hockey and even reached the level of playing semi-professionally. Ewan's thirst for knowledge led him to obtain a bachelor's degree in history from Siena College, showcasing his intellectual curiosity. He was not a person who would be satisfied with a single vocation, so he also embarked on the journey to become a firefighter. Additionally, he shared his expertise as a personal trainer. In 2006, Ewan was arrested in Connecticut for driving under the influence and traffic offenses. He pleaded guilty, resulting in a suspended prison sentence and probation. After this, Ewan DeWitt's journey took an inspiring turn when he joined the prestigious ranks of the U.S. Marine Corps in 2009, where he embarked on a path as a skilled weapons specialist and non-commissioned officer. He served his country for 5 years and attained the rank of Lance Corporal in 2011. In a remarkable photo from his time in the Marines, Lance Corporal Ewan DeWitt is seen in action as a machine gunner. The picture shows him courageously operating a powerful M250 caliber machine gun on a vehicle during an important defense of the Amphibious Task Force naval exercise. The event took place on December 3, 2011, aboard the USS Kearsarge. With his leadership qualities and expertise, he assumed the role of a machine gun section leader in the esteemed 1st Reconnaissance Battalion, dedicating himself to his duties, serving multiple tours in Afghanistan, the Middle East, and other classified locations with his dedicated brothers. Ewan and his brothers' inspiring story was captured in a 2015 article in the Register Citizen, highlighting their collective efforts to restore a piece of history. Ewan's life took a darker turn when he faced legal trouble. In November 2019, the Milford police arrested him for assaulting a victim, which resulted in a protective order being issued by the court. The case remains unresolved, as court records revealed that it was still pending. With his next court date scheduled for April 14, 2023, Ewan maintained his innocence by pleading not guilty. He was released on a $20,000 bond, awaiting the judicial process to unfold. Ewan's troubled past included a disturbing incident in which he was arrested for his actions towards Julie shortly after the birth of their son. Reports stated that he had thrown a large object at Julie Minogue and had also destroyed her phone to prevent her from calling for help. Fearing for her safety, Julie sought refuge at a neighbor's house and contacted the authorities. The incident highlighted the alarming nature of Ewan's behavior and its impact on those around him, adding another layer of intensity to the unfolding events. In 2021, he faced charges of assaulting emergency personnel and a female in Wake County, North Carolina. Court records indicated that he pled guilty and received a combined jail sentence of 95 days. Although the exact duration of his incarceration remained unknown, these encounters with the law showcased a pattern of concerning behavior, raising further questions about Ewan's character and past actions. Behind Ewan DeWitt's troubled history, a darker pattern of violence emerged, specifically targeting Julie Minogue. Several protective orders were filed against Ewan due to previous instances of domestic violence. These orders were issued in November 2019 and January 2021 and were put in place to safeguard not only Julie but also the children who were present during those incidents. One such incident involved Ewan being intoxicated and engaging in a heated argument with Julie. According to a statement provided by the victim's son, Ewan had thrown a playpen at Julie's head, which resulted in a distressing injury. While Ewan was in rehabilitation, Julie took steps to file a restraining order, seeking protection from his harmful actions. Despite this, Ewan was granted visitation rights, which left a lingering sense of unease and concern about the safety of those involved. In addition to their troubled relationship, Julie and Ewan DeWitt found themselves entangled in family court cases beginning in 2021. It all began when Julie filed a petition for child support for their son Luke in August 2021. In October 2021, a judge ruled in her favor and ordered Ewan to provide financial support. As tensions continued to escalate, Ewan took Julie to court in December 2021, seeking resolution regarding visitation rights. The court intervened and granted supervised visitation for Ewan in April 2022, with a scheduled hearing in April 2023 to further address the matter. These legal battles shed light on the complexities and challenges faced by Julie and Ewan as they navigated their post-relationship dynamics. As the investigation progressed, new details were revealed. On November 14, 2022, just 3 weeks before her death, Julie took a decisive step by visiting the Milford Police Department to file a complaint against Ewan. She alleged that he had bombarded her with over 200 text messages within a span of just 2 days, despite the existence of a protective order that explicitly forbade him from contacting her. Officer Scott Nablin listened to Julie's concerns and diligently collected evidence of the text messages from her phone, further fortifying the case against Ewan. In a heartfelt plea for protection, Julie Minogue expressed her deep concern for her safety and the well-being of her children in a sworn affidavit submitted on November 17, 2022. Determined to put an end to the ongoing abuse, she stated, "I don't believe I should endure this mistreatment any longer." Fearful of the consequences, she detailed the relentless harassment she faced. Julie Minogue also wrote in the document that, "Ewan has got himself into a lot of trouble with drugs and alcohol, and I'm scared he's going to kill me." Officer Nablin, resolute in his pursuit of justice, meticulously crafted an arrest warrant alleging Ewan's violation of the protective order. The document, filled with crucial details, was reviewed by a supervisor, ensuring its accuracy and validity. They made sure that the arrest warrant application contained the requisite probable cause to support the charge that the text messages sent by Ewan DeWitt violated the modified protective order that was issued on January 15, 2021. On November 21, 2022, the completed warrant application made its way to the Milford State's Attorney's Office. However, the story took an unexpected turn as the Assistant State's Attorney, committed to thoroughness, sent the warrant application back to Officer Nablin and requested further information before proceeding. In this delicate dance between law and justice, every step forward demanded meticulous attention to detail. However, on December 1, 2022, Julie Minogue successfully obtained a civil restraining order from a judge. In the hearing, which lasted about an hour, Julie presented evidence of the text messages, Ewan's struggles with substance abuse, mental health issues, and a history of violence. She expressed concern for Ewan's well-being, describing his bipolar rage and erratic behavior, and emphasized the importance of him receiving proper treatment and therapy. Julie firmly believed that Ewan should not be allowed around anyone until he had received the necessary help and support. Recognizing the imminent danger she faced, a no-contact restraining order was swiftly issued on December 1, 2022, providing a legal shield against any further interaction with Ewan. This order took a darker turn when, 5 days later, Ewan killed Julie with an axe in her condo. Now, all the evidence indicated that Ewan was the main focus of the investigation, and the search for him intensified as the police tirelessly canvassed the area around the Salem Walk condominium, leaving no stone unturned. Their efforts led them to a dive bar on Ocean Avenue in West Haven, where they sought the assistance of the local community. They approached patrons, informing them about the ongoing investigation and urging them to notify the authorities if they spotted Ewan DeWitt. It was during this concerted effort that two observant individuals caught sight of a person who matched the suspect's description. Eager to aid the investigation, they immediately flagged down the police, providing crucial information about the suspect's whereabouts. Engaging with one of the witnesses, who preferred to remain anonymous, police learned that the individual had witnessed someone resembling the suspect wandering around the parking lot for a brief period. Eventually, the suspect entered a food truck located in the parking lot. Acting swiftly, the police converged on the scene. Without incident, they apprehended Ewan DeWitt on December 6, 2022, bringing him into custody and moving one step closer to uncovering the truth. The police initiated a rigorous interrogation of Ewan in the early hours of December 6, 2022. Initially, Ewan maintained a stoic silence, withholding vital information. However, after hours of intense questioning, a breakthrough occurred. Ewan finally confessed to the gruesome act of taking Julie's life with an axe. He revealed that he had silently entered the house through the kitchen window, concealing himself in anticipation of his victim's arrival. When Julie eventually entered the kitchen, he launched an attack, wielding the axe with deadly intent. It was during this horrifying moment that Sean, Julie's son, descended the stairs and confronted the scene. Overwhelmed with fear, Ewan fled, leaving the axe behind on the gas stove. Ewan's admission sent shockwaves through the investigation, bringing forth a chilling account of the tragic events that unfolded that night. During Ewan's initial court appearance in State Superior Court in Milford on December 7, 2022, Assistant State's Attorney Alana Paul informed the judge about new developments in the case. She revealed that Ewan had fully admitted to the incident, but even without that admission, she believed the evidence against him was substantial. Attorney Paul highlighted the presence of surveillance footage and the testimony of Julie's son, who had observed part of the incident. Given the seriousness of the case, Paul argued that a significant bond was necessary. Emphasizing the gravity of the situation, Judge Armin Garoyan set his bond at $5 million. The judge expressed concerns about Ewan's history of disregarding court orders and emphasized the importance of public safety. In light of the circumstances, Ewan was placed on suicide watch with a hearing scheduled for December 14, 2022, to further address the case. Finally, it was the day of the final decision. On December 14, 2022, in addition to the murder charge, Ewan DeWitt faced multiple other charges brought forth by the Milford police. These included criminal violation of a protective order, criminal violation of a restraining order, risk of injury to a minor, and reckless endangerment. By levying these charges, law enforcement sought to address the broader scope of Ewan's alleged actions and their impact. A hearing was scheduled for Ewan DeWitt's pending criminal cases on April 6, 2023. He has yet to plead. Prosecutors stated that Ewan had already confessed to the murder of Julie Minogue. However, no further information has been released by the police about the hearing. In a statement, the family expressed their determination to take action and ensure that those who neglected their responsibilities are held accountable. They also expressed their hope that this case would serve as a catalyst for improved protections for individuals facing domestic violence and abuse. With their unwavering commitment, the family aims to bring about positive changes and prevent such tragic incidents from occurring in the future. This case involved a combination of diligent efforts by law enforcement and the heinous acts of a killer who killed his ex-girlfriend in a rage of anger. On November 6, 1999, When Jennifer Watkins failed to return home after her shift at Memorial Hospital, her husband, Michael Watkins, called the Fountain Police Department to report her missing. On the same day, Irene Skinner, Jennifer Watkins' mother, who babysat her grandchildren, contacted the Colorado Springs Police Department after her daughter failed to come pick up the kids. Almost immediately, a report of a missing person was initiated by the Colorado Springs Police Department. During the initial investigation, detectives and investigating patrol officers carried out interviews with Jennifer Watkins' family members and co-workers numerous times. Officers were able to discover Jennifer Watkins' car with Michael Watkins' help in an employee parking area close to Printers Parkway and East Ikes Peak Avenue. The car was seized, but no items of evidence or hints connected to Jennifer Watkins' disappearance were found during the ensuing search. The investigators continued to search for Jennifer Watkins, interviewing people at Memorial Hospital where she worked. While at the hospital on November 8, 1999, detectives received word around 10 a.m. that a corpse had been discovered behind a stairwell in a section of the hospital that was still under construction. It appeared that 2 Dover elevator service workers entered the stairwell on the 8th level to examine and fix an elevator shaft that needed repair. They perceived a very different and offensive smell as soon as they approached the stairwell area. When the elevator staff peered under the stairwell, they noticed what appeared to be the outline of a body bound with duct tape and covered in plastic. Upon request, the scene was immediately visited by investigators from the Colorado Springs Police Department Homicide Unit, Metro Crime Lab, and the El Paso County Coroner's Office. After the investigators removed the plastic, they found a deceased white female adult with brown hair. The victim was dressed in a purple blouse, black slacks, and a teal uniform smock. Her clothing was laid out in a way that suggested a sexual assault had taken place. Detectives questioned a number of workers and contractors at Memorial Hospital throughout the course of the investigation. No suspect was found despite looking into more potential suspect leads. The deceased adult female's autopsy was soon completed by the El Paso County Coroner's Office, and she turned out to be 23-year-old Jennifer Watkins, who had suddenly gone missing a few days back. According to David Bowerman, the coroner for El Paso at the time, Jennifer had died of blunt force trauma to the head. Her death was determined to be a homicide. The question of who killed Jennifer Watkins bugged the police and her family for years. Jennifer Lee Watkins was born on the 24th of November 1975 to William and Irene Skinner in Methuen, Massachusetts. She was the second of 4 children, and Joseph, her youngest brother, held a special place in her heart. Jennifer obtained her high school diploma from Hanover, Colorado High School. She enjoyed socializing with friends and caring for her pets. Jennifer loved playing volleyball and wished to help people. Her love for music made her join the school band as a clarinetist. Jennifer Watkins desired a career as a nurse. She and her husband, Michael Watkins, married on the 8th of April, 1995, and roughly 3 years later, Michael was hired as a maintenance worker at Memorial Hospital in Colorado Springs. Not long after, Jennifer was also hired there as a dietitian. The investigators worked tirelessly to bring justice to Jennifer's family. As part of the crime scene processing, a close inspection of the plastic used to wrap Jennifer Watkins' body turned up some hairs, fibers, and a yellow-whitish stain that was eventually identified as cement. At the autopsy, further biological evidence was also gathered. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation received a number of pieces of evidence for analysis. In addition to the victim's DNA profile, 2 other DNA profiles were created from the evidence items submitted for processing. The plastic wrap, the victim's pants, and semen samples taken at the autopsy were used to create these profiles. Although the semen found in Jennifer Watkins' pants and on the plastic wrap matched each other, they did not match the sample taken during the autopsy. A number of potential suspects had their biological samples taken, and all of them had been exonerated because their DNA did not match the 2 unidentified DNA samples. Although there were security cameras installed all over the hospital facility, the pictures were too blurry to be of much help. Police originally concentrated on those with access to the crime site, but there were no leads. They then shifted concentration to Michael Watkins, who worked night shift in the hospital's housekeeping division. Irene Skinner, Jennifer Watkins' mother, had her doubts about Michael. According to Irene, Her daughter's life took a different turn after she moved in with her husband, Michael Watkins, whom she had attended grade school with. Irene Skinner reported that Michael Watkins struggled with drug use, and more often than not, Jennifer required multiple visits to the emergency department as a result of domestic abuse. Also, in addition to his volatile personality and tumultuous relationship with Jennifer, Michael Watkins had run-ins with the law in the past, which involved criminal mischief and a pellet gun incident. He was, however, interrogated multiple times. As the investigation progressed, he complied fully with all the proceedings. Michael admitted he had an affair with Jennifer since one of the DNA found on Jennifer Watkins' body came from him. He, however, denied killing her. After obtaining a warrant, they searched Michael Watkins' home and discovered a pair of pants that seemed to be covered in blood. An analysis of the object revealed that it was blood, but it was Michael's blood. The two DNA samples that were taken from the crime scene didn't provide any answers. Even if the one from Jennifer's body matched Michael's DNA, it didn't raise a red flag because Michael was married to Jennifer. The other DNA sample from the plastic was unknown. The police asked Michael Watkins to take a polygraph test, to which he consented and passed. Even though Michael was still a suspect, the detectives looked at other possibilities. They focused on a male hospital employee who mysteriously left town without warning or collecting his final salary immediately after the murder of Jennifer. During investigation, detectives soon discovered that the man was on probation for a murder in Louisiana, which he claimed was self-defense. When authorities located him, he rejected all accusations of involvement in Jennifer Watkins' murder and consented to provide a DNA sample. His DNA, however, didn't match the DNA discovered at the crime site where Jennifer was killed. Following a thorough investigation, no suspect was found, and the case eventually became cold. Numerous investigators have been trying to identify a suspect in Jennifer Watkins' murder for the past 21 years without success. Jennifer's case remained unresolved for a while. Over the years, technological advancements in familial DNA analysis occurred. Between 2017 and 2018, cold case investigators with the help of Parabon Nanolabs, a Virginia-based DNA technology business, used DNA phenotyping to determine the physical characteristics and ancestry of the unidentified DNA evidence at the crime scene. The suspect traits were predicted using the DNA evidence found in Jennifer Watkins' pants. Parabon made an individual prediction of the suspect's ancestry, eye color, hair color, skin tone, freckling, and face shape. A snapshot composite was created by combining these physical characteristics to show what the suspect would have looked like at age 25, and with an average body mass index of 22. Due to the fact that age and body mass index cannot be established from DNA, these default values were utilized. In an effort to generate leads, this photo was subsequently released to the public. The findings showed that the murderer had fair skin, blue or green eyes, blonde or brown hair, and was around 25 years old when the crime occurred. However, investigators were able to focus on a person who police had actually interrogated in 1999 after using genetic genealogy to narrow down the suspect. The killer was Ricky Sievert. According to a check of the original case report, Ricky Sievert, who was 29 at the time of the murder, was questioned by investigators on November 19, 1999, as a part of the initial homicide investigation. He was employed by Memorial Hospital and was a member of the maintenance team. He started working there in April 1998. According to Ricky Sievert's work schedule that he provided during his interview, on November 5, 1999, the day Jennifer Watkins was last seen, he would have been working a swing shift. Additionally, he denied ever having met Jennifer Watkins when asked. Finally, the culprit has been identified, but sadly, further investigation revealed that on November 2, 2001, 2 years after Jennifer Watkins' murder, Ricky Sievert was killed in a car accident on Highway 94, just east of Colorado Springs. The investigators obtained DNA samples from the suspect's living relatives. According to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, the proportion of the population that may be excluded as a contributor to the DNA gathered in this case is 99.99994%. It means Ricky Sievert cannot be excluded. The 4th Judicial District Attorney's Office received the Jennifer Watkins case on October 1, 2020. For examination, the district attorney's office is certain that Ricky Sievert killed Jennifer Watkins. The investigation into the murder of Jennifer Watkins will be closed as exceptionally cleared due to the death of the offender because Ricky Sievert had already died in a car accident in 2001. After all these years, we are grateful to finally give Jennifer Watkins' family the answers they deserve. No matter the length of time, we will always work to serve this community. And I am proud of all the cold case detectives throughout the last 21 years who have never stopped working. For Miss Watkins, not for one moment did they ever lose sight of what was most important, finding the truth for the Watkins family. And thank you to our partners. We would not have been able to solve this case without your time, skill, and dedication, said Colorado Springs Police Department Chief Vince Nisk. One of Brighton's most eerie incidents is the murder case known as the Babes in the Wood murders. Sadly, the case went unsolved for more than 30 years until new evidence was eventually discovered. Hello and welcome to Mystery Detective. Please support my channel by subscribing and hitting the bell icon for more crime cases. The Babes in the Wood murders revolves around the killings of two 9-year-old girls named Nicola Fellows and Karen Hadaway. Despite attending different schools, Nicola and Karen were great friends who lived on the same street in Moulsecoomb, Brighton, Sussex, England. On October 9, 1986, after school hours were over around 3:30 p.m., the girls decided to go play. Around 5 o'clock, Nicola's mother, Susan Fellows, saw them playing with a roller boot on the street, not knowing that would be the last time she would see the girls alive. Nicola and Karen moved away from their street and were soon spotted by a 14-year-old friend near certain stores on Lewis Road. They were then ordered to return home, since their parents would be concerned about their whereabouts. At 6:30 p.m., the girls were also seen close to a police box on Lewis Road, and that was the last time anyone ever saw them alive. Night came and it was time for bed, but neither Fellows nor Hadaway had arrived home. Their families became worried. Karen Hadaway's mother, Michelle Hadaway, immediately dialed 999 to report the two girls missing. The police and hundreds of people from Moulsecoomb commenced a massive search for the girls when word of their disappearance spread. In the course of searching, a witness came forward to report that they heard Nicola Fellows allegedly telling Karen Hadaway the evening they were last seen to go to the park. In her words, Nicola said, "Come on, let's go over to the park," referring to Wild Park, where they were not permitted. On hearing this, the search party then focused their attention on finding the girls in Wild Park. On the afternoon of October 10, 1986, Nicola Fellows and Karen Hadaway's bodies were discovered in Wild Park. The girls were discovered in a makeshift cave, and an autopsy later proved that they had been sexually molested and strangled. The Babes in the Wood murders shook the whole of Brighton. Moulsecoomb residents wondered who could have wickedly assaulted and murdered the two lovable girls. The Sussex police began an investigation into the case, and shortly after, witnesses came forward to say they had seen a young man named Russell Bishop near the same police box on Lewis Road where the girls had been seen. They confirmed he was wearing what appeared to be a light blue top, which the police would later discover near the crime scene. Another witness came forward to say they saw Russell Bishop leaving Wild Park around 6:30 p.m. By now, the police had a suspect. They tracked down Russell Bishop and took him into custody on October 31, 1986, in relation to the girls' killings. This came after he was questioned and he gave a number of contradictory statements and alibis. On December 3, 1986, Bishop was accused of the murder of Nicola Fellows and Karen Hadaway. He was held in detention, pending a trial the following year. Before his arrest, Russell Bishop, a 20-year-old roofer and occasional burglar, was a part of the search team who looked for the girls. During the search, he said that his terrier Misty was such a superb tracker dog that it had a £17,000 insurance policy. Russell Bishop was well known in Moulsecoomb despite residing in the nearby Brighton neighborhood of Hollingbury. He appeared to have connections to the families of the girls he murdered. A friend of his, Dougie Judd, was staying with the Fellows family at the time. Bishop often participated in football and cricket games with Barry Fellows, the father of Nicola Fellows. Even the day the girls vanished, he went to Nicola Fellows in an attempt to speak with his friend who lodged there, but was told to leave by Nicola Fellows. Both sets of parents urged their girls to avoid Russell Bishop because he was known for having a sexual interest in young girls. Then again, Bishop would often ask them to run errands for him and Jenny Johnson, his pregnant girlfriend. Despite sharing a home with his girlfriend and their son, he was rumored to have a long history of relationships. At the time of the murders, Bishop was having an affair with a 16-year-old who lived around the block from the girls. Russell Bishop's strong ties to the search for the girls ultimately led to his downfall. He was said to have prompted officers towards the area where Nicola and Karen were discovered. The trial came, and unfortunately, Russell Bishop was found not guilty in the first trial in 1987, which was largely the result of mistakes made by the prosecution team. Despite a 4-week trial at Lewis Crown Court, Russell Bishop was acquitted of the girls' rape and murder after barely 2 hours of jury deliberations. No time of death could be given because the body's temperatures weren't taken, making it impossible to know with certainty when Nicola Fellows and Karen Hadaway passed away. As a result, the prosecution was only able to allege that the girls had been slain between 6:15 and 6:30 p.m., which was not supported by scientific evidence. This left Russell Bishop's vague and inconsistent alibis unquestioned. Also, the blood found on Karen Hadaway's underpants was never analyzed, and the handprints around the girls' necks were not examined for fingerprints or hand measurements. Furthermore, a blue Pinto sweatshirt with the same logo as the one Russell Bishop was seen wearing the day of the murder was also found abandoned close to the crime scene. But the police's negligence to keep the evidence safe prompted the defense to question its credibility. Bishop insisted during the trial that the blue shirt was not his. Although Bishop's then-girlfriend Jenny Johnson told police that the cloth was his, she however denied it when she entered the witness box. After the back and forth at the court with no well-researched evidence, the jury followed the instructions of the presiding judge, Justice Cheeseman, to acquit unless they were absolutely certain that the girls had passed away by 6:30 p.m. The lack of sufficient evidence got Russell Bishop out of jail. In 2009, Barry Fellows, Nikolai's father, was arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to rape his daughter. Dougie Judd, Bishop's friend, was also detained on a rape suspicion. They, however, were later freed without charges when a Sussex police spokesman claimed that the investigation into allegations of sexual abuse was separate from the ongoing murder probe. The investigators at the time worked tirelessly to pinpoint the killer, but since there was no advancement in DNA technology in the 1980s, there was nothing much they could do, and so the Babes in the Wood murders went cold for over 3 decades. On the 30th anniversary of the Nicola Fellows and Karen Hadaway's murder, family and friends marched to the Sussex Police Department, demanding a reopening and re-examination of the case. In the year 2016, when there was advancement in DNA technology, the investigators were finally able to link the strange DNA samples at the crime scene to Russell Bishop. Eurofin's Forensic Services was able to identify a 1,000,000,000 DNA match that connected Bishop to the discarded blue shirt. Additionally, a tape pulled from Karen Hadaway's left arm contained Bishop's DNA. The police had always believed Russell Bishop was the suspect but didn't have enough evidence at the time to prosecute him. However, when he committed a similar crime in 1990, they started looking for means to confirm that he was the one who had perpetrated the Babes in the Woods murders. 4 years after the girls' murder in the year 1990, Russell Bishop was arrested and charged for a horrific attack on a 7-year-old Brighton girl. It happened that on the 1st of February 1990, he had grabbed the 7-year-old girl off the street, locked her in the boot of his car, and driven to Devil's Dyke where she had been abused, strangled, and then left for dead in a bush. By some miracle, she made it to the side of the road where she was found by people who rescued her. Later, the victim was able to identify Russell Bishop as the person who attacked her. Later in 1990, he was charged with the crime which seemed identical to the Babes in the Woods murders. Bishop was remanded to prison while awaiting trial. During his trial, Russell Bishop was found guilty of kidnapping, indecent assault, and attempted murder in December of that same year. He was then given a life sentence with a minimum recommended duration of 14 years before he would be eligible for release. This crime of his prompted investigators to look deeper into Nicola Fellows and Karen Hadaway's murder case. A new trial was held more than 30 years after the girls' murders as a result of the discovery of the new evidence against Russell Bishop, which was made possible by the 2005 removal of the double jeopardy rules from the provisions of the Criminal Justice Act of 2003. In May 2016, Russell Bishop was escorted from his jail cell to a police station, where he was subsequently arrested again for the killings of Karen Hadaway and Nicola Fellows. The 1987 acquittals were overturned by a ruling issued by the Court of Appeal in December 2017, paving the way for a fresh trial. Russell Bishop's trial at the Old Bailey took place in October 2018. Thanks to technological advancements, the prosecution produced a fresh timeline that indicated the girls were still alive at 6:30 p.m. and that Bishop had gone back into Wild Park to complete what he started. On December 10, 2018, Bishop was ultimately found guilty of his charges. After a 9-week trial and 2.5 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a guilty verdict. The families of Nicola Fellows and Karen Hadaway ultimately received justice when Russell Bishop was given a life sentence with a minimum recommended time of 36 years. However, at the age of 55, he passed away from cancer on January 20, 2022. A nighttime stroll turns into a tragic crime. Going anywhere with someone you barely know is generally a bad idea that often ends poorly, especially when you're in a foreign city and the acquaintance was made just a couple of hours ago at a local entertainment venue. It's not necessarily, though not excluded, that the casual friend will turn out to be a maniac, assailant, or robber, but they might accidentally or intentionally draw you into troubles or even lead to a disaster. An American student named Maricela Botella Valadez planned to simply have a good time at a popular nightclub where she unexpectedly met an aspiring rapper who showed interest in her and suggested they continue the evening in a more intimate setting. However, the new acquaintance was already in a relationship, and a complicated one at that. He was part of a rather unusual love triangle, and the other participants did not appreciate the sudden appearance of the young beauty. Her naive trust cost the young woman her life, but the case turned out to be anything but straightforward. It involved insane jealousy, the desire to cling to fading youth, occult practices, and even an international search for fugitive criminals. Nevertheless, thanks to the Herculean efforts of the investigators, it was possible to find all participants of the crime and establish the role of each. What is known about Maricela? Maricela Botella Valadez was born in 1997 in Seattle, the largest city in the state of Washington. She was the eldest of 2 children in a family of Latin American descent raised alongside her younger brother. People described her as a sweet, sociable young woman who always had many friends, performed well in school, and after graduating, became a student at a prestigious university. Furthermore, Maricela was considered truly beautiful, petite, slim brunette with big brown eyes, luxurious hair, and a flawless figure. She always had a host of admirers, loved being the center of attention, enjoyed lively parties where she could have fun, and cherished every day. On Saturday, October 3, 2020, the student flew to Dallas to meet up with old friends. However, by Monday morning, she planned to return. Her brother was supposed to meet her at the airport on October 5th, after which they would head to the university together. But the plane arrived without her. The search for the missing student. When all the passengers from the flight arriving from Dallas had left the airport, her brother realized that Maricela was not among them. Concerned, the young man tried to call his sister, but her phone was turned off. He then called their parents to inform them about the situation. Since Maricela was a serious and responsible young woman, it was out of character for her to disappear without warning and not show up for university classes. The family started calling her friends in Dallas, trying to find out where she might have gone and where she was last seen. It turned out that the night before, she had been partying at one of the city's most popular clubs, where she met a black man named Chuck. The pair danced, enjoyed themselves, and had alcoholic drinks, after which they disappeared together. Maricela was not seen again, and her phone went unanswered. The information seriously alarmed and frightened her parents, so they immediately decided to report her disappearance to the police. It turned out that the young woman had indeed bought tickets for a flight to Seattle, but for some reason she had not boarded the plane. No one had seen her since that night, and no one knew where she might be. It was necessary to find out who Maricela's new acquaintance was, where they had gone, and whether she had gone with him willingly. Examining footage from external surveillance cameras located around the club, Law enforcement officers saw the missing student leaving with a young man whose face could not be clearly seen on the video. According to the footage, she appeared to be walking with him voluntarily. The pair got into a black Audi car and drove off in an unknown direction. The mysterious new friend. Since the disappearance of 23-year-old Botella Valadez, several days had passed, and she had still not contacted anyone, nor had she logged into her social media accounts, and there were no transactions on her bank cards. The police needed to identify the stranger she had left with as soon as possible to understand where to look for them. One of her missing friends mentioned that her companion was possibly named Chuck, but that information was insufficient. Soon, thanks to the street camera footage, it was possible to determine the direction the car had traveled. Additionally, it turned out that the pair had stopped at a supermarket, where they also appeared on camera footage. Both looked happy, smiling, and showing affection for each other. The young woman picked out several drinks and candies, and the young man paid for everything at the checkout using a card in the name of Charles Beltran. Thus, it became clear who Maricela had left with. Beltran was a 31-year-old musician and even considered a rising local rap star. However, the man had a criminal past, having been incarcerated twice for robbery and armed assault. He had served less than 3 years and was released on parole. Recently, the young man's career was on the rise, and he was even preparing to release his own music album. It was soon discovered where Charles lived, and by checking the cell phone carrier's data, it was revealed that the missing student's phone had been active at that fatal night's location. However, the house was owned by a woman named Lisa Dyke, and the musician was just renting a room from her. The very strange house. When police accompanied by an FBI agent assigned to investigate the girl's disappearance visited the address, the house was empty. They were only able to contact Lisa Dyke by phone, as she claimed to be out of state on business. She confirmed that Charles Beltran had been renting a room in her home, claimed that he moved out a couple of weeks ago, and she had no knowledge of his whereabouts since. Since law enforcement was unable to locate or contact the sole suspect, they obtained a warrant to search the house where he had lived. What awaited them inside was a collection of unexpected and frightening discoveries. The house was in chaos, with disorder and unsanitary conditions prevalent. It seemed as if the occupants had left in a hurry, taking only the most necessary items and leaving everything else scattered around. The kitchen sink was piled high with dirty dishes. Moldy food remnants sat on the table, and trash littered the corners. Notably, amidst all this mess, numerous empty bottles of cleaning and detergent products were found scattered around with traces on the floors and carpets, as if something had been thoroughly scrubbed. In one of the upstairs rooms, peculiar and even sinister black statue of death, draped in a black cloak and holding a scythe, stood. It could have been mistaken for a quirky piece of decor, but it was set up as a sort of altar with wax candles, dried flowers, and 2 metal bowls. It resembled the Mexican religious cult of Santa Muerte, translated as Holy Death, where a female deity representing death is worshipped, and the atmosphere within seemed more than just strange. It felt as if something terrible had happened here, and afterward the occupants hurriedly cleaned up, packed the essentials, and simply fled. To ascertain this, a more thorough examination was conducted using special tools to detect traces of blood. This revealed numerous wiped blood stains on the floor in one of the bedrooms, in the bathroom, and in the hallway. It was later discovered that the bedroom where the carpet was practically soaked in blood belonged to Charles, and it appeared that a violent crime had taken place there. But who was the victim? The missing girl, the tenant himself, or someone else? Despite all attempts to clean the traces, the blood had soaked into the covering, seeped under the baseboards, stained the wallpaper and furniture. Experts compared the found traces with Maricela's DNA, and any last doubts were dispelled. The blood belonged to the girl. The house was sealed as a crime scene, but now the task was to find the main suspect, possible accomplices, and witnesses. This task was not easy. As it turned out, Charles had fled, and the owner, even before the police visit, had hastily put the house up for sale. Therefore, the police decided to learn as much as possible about everyone who had recently lived in this house. The love triangle. Neighbors revealed that 3 people lived in the house: 57-year-old Lisa Dyke, 48-year-old Nina Morano, and 31-year-old Charles Beltran. However, The nature of their relationship and their sudden disappearance remained unclear. It was necessary to investigate each individual's background and find and interrogate them as soon as possible. The house owner, who was the only one reachable by phone, had worked many years as a lawyer, known as a commanding, ambitious, and quite contentious woman. She had been married 3 times, and after becoming a widow several years ago, received a substantial inheritance. There was no financial necessity for her to rent a room to some guy, nor was Lisa known for her charity, suggesting she had some other interest in the matter. The young black man named Charles, or simply Chuck, Beltran, dreamed of making it on the music scene to build a rap career, but he lacked both money and connections, and his criminal past hindered him. However, about a year ago, he met Dyke, who moved him into her house, helped set up a small recording studio there, and even sponsored the filming of several music videos for the aspiring rapper. Moreover, she even bought him a car, paid for his entertainment and fashionable clothes, while insisting that their relationship was strictly business, and she saw great potential in this talented young man. The money she spent on him was an investment. The situation with Nina Morano was even more intriguing. She and Lisa had been in an intimate relationship for a long time, and after Dyke became a widow, she stopped hiding her affair with her lover. Moreover, several months ago, the women officially legalized their union by getting married. Nina moved into her spouse's house, where Charles was already living. According to a close friend of hers, Lisa had an intimate relationship with the young musician. Although she vehemently denied this, she secretly told her friend how amazing a lover he was. Apparently, she was in love with him because after their relationship began, Dyke desperately tried to look younger. She lost 55 pounds, changed her image, started wearing bright makeup, and even got several colorful tattoos. Most importantly, she evicted her own children from the home, who in her view were already grown enough and interfered with her personal life. Clearly, Chuck also had a vested interest in living with a wealthy, albeit older lover, as she solved all his financial problems and helped him build a music career. However, he was a noticeable, attractive man in good physical shape, so women did not ignore him. He often engaged in fleeting flings with young women, which drove Lisa insane with jealousy. But what role did Nina Morano play in this whole story, and specifically in the case of Maricella's disappearance? According to the same close friend, Lisa's spouse was part of this strange love triangle and was the only woman with whom Dyke not only allowed her young lover to sleep, but even insisted on it. Nina was also a successful lawyer and a very affluent woman. Thus, this trio lived in pleasure, sparing nothing. Interestingly, after their wedding, both women took the boy's last name, so the house was occupied by Charles, Lisa, and Nina Beltran. Where did the house's inhabitants vanish to? It was discovered that since the student's disappearance, no one had been seen at the house where her blood was found. Lisa was only contacted once. She answered a few questions, stated she was in another state, and thereafter her phone went unanswered. Nothing was known about the fate and whereabouts of Nina, as well as the main suspect, Charles. By tracking mobile phone signals, it was determined that on the night of October 5th, all 3 inhabitants, as well as the missing Maricela, were in the house. By early morning, their device signals had moved to a suburban area of Dallas in a fairly deserted, wooded area. Then the signals disappeared, and a few days later, Lisa only responded from her second work phone, which later also became unreachable. The mutilated remains. Using geolocation data from the mobile devices, the route taken that night by the sought-after group was traced, and the stops they made were identified. It was presumed that somewhere in this area, they might have disposed of the missing student's body. This defined a broad search radius, but the area was vast and difficult to navigate, so progress was slow despite efforts. Closer to the new year, the search operation was halted as neither the body nor any clues were found. However, in March 2021, a local hunter wandering through the woods stumbled upon a human skull that appeared relatively fresh. He promptly reported his find to the police, and the remains were soon brought to a forensic laboratory for necessary examinations. Bental records confirmed that the body belonged to the Seattle student who had been missing for nearly half a year. However, The advanced state of decomposition and damage caused by wild animals made it impossible to establish the exact cause of death. Notably, several characteristic marks on the bones suggested knife wounds, but it was unclear whether these were the fatal injuries. The arrest of the first suspects. Soon after the grim discovery in the forest, authorities managed to track down Lisa, who had moved to Florida with Nina and rented a house in Miami by the ocean. Unfortunately, only Nina could be apprehended, while her spouse, learning about the situation, hurriedly went into hiding. There were no traces of Charles, although he periodically communicated with former girlfriends via messengers. In her last correspondence, Dyke mentioned that the young woman's body had been found and warned everyone to be extremely cautious as the police were on their trail. Nina, now incarcerated, refused to provide any information, claiming she knew nothing about Maricella's fate. Meanwhile, Lisa, using all her connections, attempted to hire a good lawyer for her spouse. It also emerged that while in Florida, Nina had put her house in South Carolina up for sale, trying to liquidate it as quickly as possible. It was likely that the women needed the money to continue hiding or to leave the country altogether. A month later, authorities successfully located and arrested Lisa, after which both women were transported back to Gallus. Initial interrogations yielded no results, and a bail of $500,000 was set for each suspect. They managed to post the significant amount and were released under house arrest. However, the women were fitted with tracking bracelets, which allowed their whereabouts to be monitored. A bold escape attempt. In August of the same year, police traced Charles to Utah, hiding at the house of one of his ex-girlfriends. The woman, who was raising a 5-year-old son fathered by Beltran, was so pleased that the child's father had returned to her that she didn't question the reasons for his unexpected decision. The arrested man initially refused to testify or cooperate with the police. He still hoped that his wealthy lover, using her money and connections, would hire a good lawyer for him and help him avoid prison. But soon, the situation drastically changed. On Christmas Eve of December 2021, the tracking bracelets worn by Lisa and Nina, who had been released on bail, suddenly went offline. Due to holiday chaos and high activity, it took until the next day to send a squad to their location. But by then, the suspects were nowhere to be found. It soon turned out that they had been meticulously planning their escape for months, and by the time the police went after them, they had already illegally crossed the border into Mexico. From there, they flew to South Korea and their trail was lost in Cambodia. The FBI was once again involved in the investigation, working with the Cambodian police and immigration services to track down the fugitive suspects. The women came under law enforcement's radar after withdrawing a large sum of money from an ATM. They tried to pay in cash everywhere to avoid revealing their whereabouts. ATM cameras helped identify the fugitives, and another camera on a neighboring building captured the license plate number of the car they arrived in. This information led to the driver who took the police to the house rented by the extravagant foreigners. The women were rearrested and extradited to the U.S. in February 2022, where justice was to be served. This time, bail was denied and they were sent directly to jail. Charles's candid confessions. By then, Chuck had fully realized that his lover was not going to save him from prison and was only concerned about herself, leading him to express a desire to cooperate with the investigation and start providing information. His account of the events of that dreadful night horrified many. Beltran confessed that he had been in an intimate relationship with the homeowner, Lisa, and her spouse, Nina. According to him, he engaged in these relationships for money and the opportunity to advance his music career. He harbored no warm feelings towards these women and often indulged in affairs with young and attractive women, which he never hid. While Nina was indifferent to his actions, Lisa sometimes became wildly jealous. On the fateful night of October 5th, Chuck met a young student named Maricela at a nightclub. The beautiful, slender girl immediately caught his attention, and it seemed he caught hers as well. After spending several hours drinking cocktails and dancing, he invited her over, and she agreed. When they arrived at his place late at night, Nina and Lisa were already asleep, so Charles easily took the girl to his room. There, the couple engaged in intimate activities, and later fell asleep. According to the suspect, In the middle of the night, Lisa entered his room and, seeing the young beauty asleep next to him, flew into a jealous rage. She went to the kitchen to grab a large knife, then returned and leaped onto Maricela, repeatedly striking her. Charles claimed he was awakened by the noise and was disoriented at first, still somewhat intoxicated. When he finally turned on the light, he was confronted with a horrific scene. Maricela's body had slid to the floor next to the bed where she had bled out. At that moment, Nina entered the room. They just stood there for a few minutes, and nobody attempted to help the victim. When Chuck regained his composure, he realized that the crime might be pinned on him since he had a criminal record, and his influential lovers could escape punishment. That's why, he said, he agreed to help dispose of the body and cover up the crime. Charles stayed with friends for several days, and when he returned to collect his belongings, he noticed that the blood stains on the floor and carpet had nearly disappeared. Lisa told him that she and Nina had taken care of everything and destroyed the evidence of the crime. Nevertheless, all three decided it was best to leave town for a while and watch from afar what would happen next. Lisa Dyke Beltran's version. Lisa's lawyer insisted that his client had no motive to attack the girl and take her life. She claimed that her relationship with Chuck was strictly business, and she viewed his promising music career as a good investment. Who he slept with or flirted with never concerned her. As a key argument, the defender pointed out that Dyke had recently entered into marriage and was happy with Moran. However, no one could explain why, after their wedding, the women suddenly decided to take the surname of the young lodger, who, according to them, meant nothing to them. At the trial, Lisa claimed that Charles was hot-tempered and very cruel, and when drunk, he became a beast, whom she feared. According to her, that night he brought a new girl from the club, but after they became intimate, an argument erupted and Chuck, in a fit of rage, grabbed a knife. She and Nina ran to the noise and tried to separate the couple, but it was too late. Marcella was dead. They helped dispose of the body and clean up the scene under the threat of becoming his next victims. Witness testimonies. Lisa's friend, who testified in court, claimed that Lisa was literally obsessed with Chuck and had repeatedly confessed to her an uncontrollable desire to eliminate any girl who got close to her young lover. Clearly, she was unable to manage her emotions. That additionally, the witness mentioned the odd statue of Santa Muerte at her friend's house. She recalled being surprised by the improvised altar during a visit. But the homeowner jokingly claimed she was into black magic and knew how to cast a spell to ensure a man could only have eyes for her. However, it seems the ritual failed, and the woman resorted to using a knife. Another witness, a real estate agent approached by the women shortly after the incident, testified that they were eager to sell several properties they owned as quickly as possible. They also wanted to put their Dallas home on the market. But since it was the site of the alleged crime, they couldn't while the investigation was ongoing. The situation escalated when the remains of the missing girl were discovered, after which Lisa and Nina were ready to sell the property at half price just to get the money quickly. Trial and sentences. The court took into account Charles's full confession and his cooperation with the investigation. However, the situation for the fugitives worsened after their attempt to flee to another continent. In March 2023, Lisa Dyke Beltran was found guilty of the brutal crime against 23-year-old Maricela, concealing evidence and attempting to flee. She was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. As for Charles Beltran and Nina Morin, they fully admitted their guilt and agreed to cooperate with the investigation. They were only found guilty of concealing evidence. Nina was sentenced to 7 years in prison, but could be released in 3 years due to good behavior. Charles, previously convicted on multiple occasions, was sentenced to 12 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after serving 8 years. A little after 7 a.m. on the 3rd of February 1996, the Orange County Police Department responded to a call over Lil Chum convenience store, which was located on Clarkona Ocoee Road in Orlando, Florida. A certain witness had called the police attention to an odd discovery that morning. According to the witness, he was driving by the Lil Chum convenience store around 6:55 a.m. when he noticed that the store's lights were off. He found it strange because the store workers would usually open by that time to commence sales. Just to be sure of what was happening, The witness attempted to enter the store, but before that, he turned around and parked close to the store to look through the windows. He claimed he didn't see a store clerk, which was unusual. A nagging suspicion then made him to contact the police to relay his concerns before driving away. When the deputies arrived at the scene, they found two guys from an unmoored car company waiting to pick up a cash deposit at the store, but the door was locked. The deputies called the store phone, but nobody answered. They then made a brief rounds at the store and discovered in the parking lot a white car. Deputies ran a license plate check and discovered that the car belonged to the store manager, Terrence Paquette. They called Terrence's residence to confirm if he was home, but they didn't get any response either. There was no way for the deputies to get into the store as it was already locked from the outside. Luckily, another employee from the store who had closed the night before was just driving by when he spotted the police at the front of the store. He then let the deputies in with his own keys. While they tried to open the door, the police discovered a minor amount of blood on the exterior lock. On getting inside, the police found Terrence Paquette, the store manager, on the floor of the men's restroom, already dead in a pool of blood. According to the medical examiner, Terrence Paquette had suffered from multiple stab wounds. He had been stabbed 73 times around his neck, torso, and extremities. His hearts and lungs were severely punctured. Investigators observed a considerable amount of bloodstains around the store and concluded that the person who stabbed Terrence Paquette had also been hurt. There were bloodstains in several locations of the store, particularly on the freezer door, the freezer flap, the lottery machine behind the counter, the key cylinder on the entry and exit door, and the door push bar. The blood patterns in the store demonstrated the suspect's movement throughout the area, from the restroom to the beverage freezer to behind the cash register where money was stolen, and ultimately on the entry and exit door where the suspect most likely fled the scene. According to the deputies, after taking about $1,000 from the safe underneath the cash register, the perpetrator took Terrence Paquette's keys and locked the doors to the store. The question of who could have murdered Terrence bugged the police and his family at the time. Terrence Paquette was said to have arrived at the Lille Champ food store between 5 and 6 in the morning to set up for a 6 a.m. opening like he usually did. Unfortunately, within a few minutes of arriving at the store, he was brutally murdered by an unidentified assailant. The police questioned those who knew him, but nothing much was known about Terrence because he had only recently relocated to Orlando, Florida. He worked 60 hours a week and did not have many known acquaintances. The investigators rapidly followed up on all leads in an effort to identify his killer, but there were hardly any witnesses to the crime. Although they had all the necessary evidence, the investigators lacked the means to put it to use. The blood samples taken from different locations at the crime scene were sent to a crime lab, and all samples were determined to have originated from the same unidentified killer. The following year, in 1997, a detective closed the case and documented it that it was pending further investigative leads. On July 22, 2003, a different detective reopened the case, re-interviewing witnesses and obtaining buccal swabs to compare with the suspect's blood, but there were no matches found. On March 17, 2003, an analyst entered the unidentified DNA profile from the freezer door handle into the combined DNA index database, but no matches were found either. Another detective, Brian Savelli, took up the investigation in 2019 and kept working to identify the suspect whose blood had been left behind in various locations of the store. During the course of going through the case, the idea of genetic genealogy came to Detective Brian Savelli's mind. Genetic genealogy uses a known DNA profile to reverse engineer a family tree for the unknown suspect. It became a well-liked new investigative tool in 2018 when the officials in California used it to pinpoint the Golden State Killer. Finally, in March 2021, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement was contacted by the Orange County Sheriff's Office to help with the investigation. To create a thorough genealogical profile that may be utilized to generate fresh leads that could help identify Terrence Paquette's killer, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement hired Othram to use cutting-edge DNA testing. Othram created a thorough genealogical profile using forensic-grade genome sequencing. After the profile was successfully created, Othram gave it to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, whose detectives uploaded the DNA profile into 2 open ancestry databases, GetMatch, and Family Tree. They later created a family tree, and it revealed that the blood samples originated from a person who shared genetic ancestry with a couple, Kenneth Stowe Sr. and his wife. Investigators were then led to the couple's 3 children. Authorities started a background check on the 3 children and discovered that one of them, Kenneth Robert Stowe Jr., a 54-year-old Eustis resident, had lived across the street from Terrence Paquette in 1996. Kenneth Robert Stowe was 28 years old at the time of the murder. Detective Brian Cervelli also found out that he had once worked at the Lil Shump convenience store. All the puzzles were coming together. In order to apprehend the murderer, detectives got the court order to commence a GPS surveillance on Robert Stowe Jr. The GPS device was placed in his vehicle on August 27, 2021, outside of his building supply business. According to Detective Brian Cervelli, while following Robert Stowe on September 14, 2021, he saw him throw a bag filled with beer cans into a trash can. The bag was taken by the detective and submitted at the Orange County's crime scene unit for testing. Forensics discovered that the DNA on one of the beer cans matched the blood from the beverage freezer door handle in 1996. On November 2, 2012, authorities arrested Robert Stowe using the fresh evidence. When questioned, he acknowledged working at the convenience store but denied killing Terrence Paquette. Robert Stowe is charged with first-degree murder with a firearm and robbery with a deadly weapon. He was ordered to be jailed without bond by a judge. Since Terrence Paquette's death, all of his family members have passed away, but officials informed a number of his friends about the arrest in the case. On Friday, August 13, 1982, around 2 p.m., 17 years old, Yanula Luciani was playing the summer hit single, Forget Me Nots by Patrice Rookins on the stereo, filling her family's London home in Hampstead with the smooth, cheerful rhythms of the American soul singer. Lucy was enjoying having the home to herself. Earlier that day, she and her mother had visited her father at the shoe repair shop he owned in a strip of stores in Fairhazel Gardens. They had taken his lunch to him. Around 1:30 p.m., her mother, Ellie, had given her the go-ahead to return home and start preparing the family's dinner while she promised to join her soon enough. Lucy walked the short distance home, arriving a little while later, and got to work. As her favorite song played, she took a lamb leg out of the fridge and started making dinner for the family. She paused her task when she heard a knock at the door. She set the lamb leg on the kitchen counter and peeked out of the window. Whatever the person outside said persuaded her to go open the door. At the doorstep stood a man in his early 20s. Being short and skinny, his hair was blow-dried and buff in such a way that he resembled his favorite actor, John Travolta, from the movie Saturday Night Fever. Lucy was a bit surprised to see a strange man standing in front of her home and wondered what he needed. A neighbor passed by and spotted Lucy and the man at her doorstep. They seemed to be having a conversation, and Lucy was said to have been at ease with the stranger, laughing even. However, 20 minutes after the neighbor spotted them, he heard a scream but did not pay much attention to it. At about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Lucy's parents, George and Ellie, arrived home, expecting to find their daughter busy making dinner as she had been instructed. But they were surprised at how silent everywhere was. They checked the kitchen and there was no sign of her. 2 pieces of Lucy's jewelry, a broken ankle chain and an earring, were scattered about the stairs and the floor. The leg of lamb Lucy had brought out of the fridge was still sitting on the kitchen counter. When they called out for her and she didn't answer, they knew something was wrong. They started to panic because it was unlike Lucy to leave the home without prior notice. They rushed into her bedroom in search of her, but she wasn't there either. However, as they entered their own bedroom, they were greeted by a sight beyond their worst imagination. On their bed laid a partially naked Lucy's dead body. Her t-shirt and bra had been cut right through the middle, exposing her bare chest. She was also naked from the waist down. Her hair and clothing were drenched with water. Words could not describe how horrified and devastated Lucy's parents were. They called in the police, who made a thorough round at the crime scene. Investigators discovered that the bath in the bathroom at the top of the home had several inches of water in it, and the door to another bedroom, the only one with a lock, had been forced open. Lucy's autopsy results revealed that she had suffocated, probably as a result of having her head restrained in an arm lock. She had, moreover, been bitten, punched, and ultimately raped. According to the police, the murderer forcefully barged into the home and chased Lucy up the stairs. The broken chain, which was discovered on the carpet, suggested that the killer may have grabbed Lucy's ankle as she ran. It is believed that Lucy tried to hide in her brother's bedroom, as it was the only room with a lock on the door. Investigators discovered a footprint at the bottom of the door. Killer had forced his way into the room, breaking off the locks. More of Lucy's jewelry was discovered upstairs, including a damaged ring and a bangle, indicating that she fought and raced from room to room in order to escape her attacker. Since her clothes and hair were completely drenched, the police suspect that the attacker finally cornered Lucy in the bathroom as she tried to hide in the bathtub. Lucy's murder horrified the neighborhood and spurred a massive manhunt. But it took decades for the case to be solved. Evidence such as semen was found on Lucy's body, but as DNA testing was not available in 1982, the sample was useless at the time. Unknown finger and palm prints were also removed off the bath's rim. The murder of Yanela Luciani generated a lot of media attention. A week after her murder, Lucy's sister Maria bravely recreated Lucy's final movement as she walked home from the shoe repair shop for the television program Police 5. In Belsize Road, a mobile police station was set up where more than 1,000 people gave witness accounts and fingerprint samples. No one was able to identify the individual who had knocked on the Yanni's door, despite the intensive police investigation and community help. Investigations showed that Lucy, Maria, and their mother, Ellie, were followed twice by a guy close to their home 3 months prior to the murder. He was described as being between the ages of 22 and 25, standing at 5 feet 6 inches with a Mediterranean complexion and having black hair that was combed back. On the 1-year and 2-year anniversary of Lucy's murder, further appeals were submitted. In 1984, on BBC Crime Watch, a composite sketch of the man Maria and her mother had seen was displayed. The case was once again featured on BBC Crime Watch in 2000, however. This time was no resolution. In 2003, 5,000 appeal flyers were distributed to nearby homes and a £10,000 reward was offered for anyone who had a vital lead that could pinpoint the culprit. Metropolitan officers and scientists have routinely examined Lucy's murder case over the years to see if advancements in forensic science would offer some clues. An incomplete DNA profile for a semen stain on the bedspread where Lucy had been discovered was taken by a scientist in 1999. Additional testing revealed that it matched the fragment of DNA retrieved from Lucy's body. In 2003, a near-complete DNA profile of the semen stain on the bedspread was acquired using a more advanced profiling approach. DNA profile was checked against the National DNA Database, but there were no matches. Even though the case was reopened, it could not progress any further. 12 years later, in December 2015, a man named James Warnock from Camden, northwest London, was arrested by the police for having pornographic photographs of children. Police had no idea they had caught a killer. As a routine, Warnock offered a DNA sample that was entered into the national database. Surprisingly, his DNA was a nearly perfect match with the semen discovered on the bedspread where Lucy was discovered. The likelihood that the sample may have come from someone else was assessed to be 1 in a billion. A break in the case came when police had started to believe that Lucy's murderer was either dead or had relocated overseas. Investigators had looked into Australia and Cyprus, not knowing that the perpetrator remained in the neighborhood the entire time. On January 12, 2016, officers tracked James Warnock down and discovered him waiting for them while quietly drinking beer in his underwear. Aside from the police matching his DNA and fingerprints, they were able to confirm that the sketch created from eyewitness accounts of the culprit was startlingly close to photographs of James Warnock that had been taken at the time. James Warnock was taken into custody first for a murder investigation and then for rape. Warnock, who was 22 at the time he killed Lucy, lived with his wife, a little more than half a mile from the Yiannis family home and had been working as a tiler in a nearby street. When questioned by police about the murder, Warnock claimed he liked to chat and have a laugh and had a similar appearance to John Travolta at the time of the crime. He denied raping and killing Lucy. He said to the police in many interviews that he had been seeing Lucy in secret after she drew his attention when he allegedly brought some boots into her father's shoe repair shop. He claimed Lucy had a lovely smile. He went on to tell investigators that he and Lucy happened to run into each other by coincidence in another store and struck up a conversation. According to him, they subsequently met 6 or 7 times, and their relationship quickly became intimate, and that explains why his DNA was found on the bedspread. Officers were able to quickly refute Warnock's assertions because a medical examiner and Lucy's family had revealed that she had been a virgin before being raped and killed. During the trial, despite evidence to the contrary, James Warnock insisted that he used to visit their home to have sex with Lucy, forcing Lucy's brothers, Rick and Petros, as well as her sister, Maria, to sit through his arguments. They wept and hung their heads as he told jurors of fictitious sexual encounters, saying, "It was always nice. It was not, vigorous or anything. We didn't go mad. It was very quick. It was gentle." The prosecution maintained that in the months leading up to the murder, James Warnock was allegedly stalking Lucy on the street because he had seen her and was attracted to her. However, they had never been close, and when he saw her coming home alone that day, he simply knocked on her door and saw a chance to carry out his evil deed. James Warnock, who compared himself to his favorite actor, John Travolta, saw himself as an irresistible young man who thought every woman would fall at his feet when he asked. When Lucy rejected his attempts to charm his way inside, he was probably hurt by her rejection, and so he broke down the door to get inside and pursued her up the stairs, where he eventually accomplished his horrible task. The trial lasted for just 2 hours, and a jury at the Old Bailey found James Warnock guilty of murder, and Recorder of London, Nicholas Hilliard QC, sentenced him to life in prison with a minimum of 25 years. James Warnock was also given concurrent sentences of 20 years for rape, and a 4 to 5 year sentence after pleading guilty to 6 counts of disseminating pornographic pictures in 2013. Lucy's brother, Rick, claimed that the incident had left the family forever damaged. The magnitude and horror of what happened that day is indescribable. "We never gave up hoping and are truly grateful to the police for finally bringing him to justice," Rick said. Tess Ritchie was born on November 30th, 1994, the youngest in a family of 5 girls. Ritchie was raised in North Bay before moving to Toronto at 19. One of her sisters, Verena Ritchie, said Tess loved her life, her dogs, and her family. Tess had served tables in the city, but her dream was to land a job as a flight attendant and see the world. She was taking steps to do just that, having completed the flight attendant course at Seneca College in North Toronto. At the same time, she was trying to get a job in one of the major hotels in Toronto. Unfortunately, Tess couldn't find a job to her liking. Her family financially supported her and never refused money when she asked for help. Some Canadian sources also say that when Tess didn't get a job at an airline or a hotel, she started learning Italian and searching for au pair jobs in Italy through the internet. Tess also had her own YouTube channel. The last video she published there was on February 23, 2014, almost 4 years before the events we'll discuss today. Tess talked about her experiences and the difficulties she had to face. Let's listen to some excerpts from this video. Unfortunately, a few years after recording this video, Tess again faced problems in her personal life. That fall, heartache destroyed her life. On November 23, 2017, Tess went through an emotional breakup with her boyfriend, Julian. The next day, she turned to her older sister, Rachel, who was 8 years older than her. The two were close. "She was my soulmate," Rachel said. On November 24th, Kath spent most of the day at Rachel's house in Toronto. They talked about the breakup, went shopping, and visited a dog park. That evening, Rachel cooked some food. However, she had to persuade her sister to eat, as she had no appetite due to stress. Despite this, Tess made plans for the night. She decided to meet an old school friend named Riley Samar. Like Ritchie, Samar was from North Bay. She had moved to Toronto in the summer of 2017. The two hadn't seen each other in years, but now that they were both living in the same city, they had started talking again. Samar suggested they go to Cruz and Tangos, a well-known drag bar in the Church and Wellesley area. That evening, Rachel's partner ordered Ritchie an Uber so she could meet Samard downtown. Rachel Ritchie recalled seeing her sister running down the front path to the Uber. That fleeting glimpse was the last time she would see her alive. Ritchie arrived at Cruz and Tangos around midnight. Samard wasn't there yet. The club was full of people. Tess texted her sister to tell her she reached the place safely. It was commonplace. Ritchie's phone was her second best friend, her sister said. The following morning, Rachel Ritchie sent her younger sister a text message. She didn't expect to hear back immediately, considering Tess had been out the night before. By 6:30 p.m., Rachel still hadn't heard from her. Soon after, she noticed that none of her texts had reached Tess. Rachel tried calling, but all the calls went straight to voicemail. Her mother, Christine Hermiston, also tried to contact Tess, but her phone was off. Christine received a message saying that Tess had ordered an Uber at 4:02 a.m. However, soon after, she canceled it. When registering an Uber account, Tess indicated her mom's credit card. Hence, Christine received a message every time her daughter used a taxi. Tess always kept in touch with her family, so when her phone did not turn on during the day, they began to suspect something could have happened to her. She usually had her phone on her at all times. Rachel asked her partner to check her sister's apartment in Scarborough. At the same time, she started contacting her friends. It was about 9 p.m. on Saturday. Kest was still missing. Her family had a bad feeling about all this. Rachel started calling hospitals and also contacted the police. By the evening of the following day, the police had no news for Tess's family. Several officers tried to find out where Tess Ritchie might be, but no one had seen or heard from her in the last 2 days. On Monday, Tess's mother, Christine, and one of her sisters traveled from North Bay to Toronto to participate in the search. They were putting up and handing out flyers with Tess's picture, hoping someone might have seen her. The family did everything in their power. As for the police, they unfortunately did not show their best side when investigating the disappearance of Tess. But we'll talk about this a little later. At the same time, it turned out that Tess's friend, Riley, with whom they visited the bar together, returned home safely after that night. When they asked Riley if she knew where Tess had gone, she said she and Tess had drunk a lot, which resulted in the bar security asking them to leave. They left the bar shortly after 2 in the morning and went to Wellesley Street to eat something. On the way there, they met a guy who eventually went with them. Riley couldn't remember his name. On Wellesley Street, they ordered hot dogs. Tess wanted a vegetarian hot dog, which ended in a conflict with the seller. Tess believed they gave her a hot dog with meat. Riley admitted that her friend took mustard and sprayed the vendor cart with it, after which she, Tess, and the guy with them had to run to Dundonald Street. While there, they saw a woman on the house porch and started talking with her. Her name was Michelle Teep. Their conversation lasted about 20 minutes. Tess told Michelle that she had recently broken up with her boyfriend and shared how hard it was for her. Michelle tried to support Tess. Moreover, they even exchanged phone numbers. Teep said Ritchie seemed like someone trying to have a good time, but when she looked into her eyes, she saw sadness. The breakup with Julian appeared to be weighing her down. I told her everything does get better and just to hang in there, Teep said. At 4 a.m., Riley received a text from her boyfriend asking her to come home. She said goodbye to and walked towards Yonge Street and then home. Tess was disappointed that Riley had left her. At 4:02 a.m., she ordered an Uber. Thus, one can assume that after her friend left her, Tess decided to go home too. The driver arrived at 4:14 a.m., but Tess wasn't there. On Wednesday, November 29th, just one day before Tess's 23rd birthday, Christine again distributed flyers with her daughter's picture in the area where people last saw her. Knowing that Riley had parted with Tess on Dundonald Street, Christine decided to explore this area. She turned to in Brassett, a nurse who worked at St. Michael's Hospital, as their daughters had been friends since elementary school in North Bay. Together, they set out to find Ritchie amid a growing search effort and social media push to locate her. That's when Brassett made a haunting discovery. Peering into the bottom of an outdoor stairwell in a construction site at 582 Church Street, Brazil immediately recognized Ritchie's body lying on the concrete. In 2017, this building was under reconstruction and partially fenced. It looked like this. I went into complete shock, horror, disbelief. I couldn't process or make sense of what I was seeing, Brazitt said through tears. I was terrified. Dust from a nearby gravel pile lay like soot on her body. Brazil let go of the staircase railing and walked backward down the gravel driveway toward Church Street. Hermiston was farther up the sidewalk by that point. Unaware that her daughter's body was so close by, Brazil began to call out to her. "Christine, come back here," she said. "There's a girl in the stairwell. You've got to come back." Hermiston turned, raced down the driveway, and stopped dead at the stairwell. After a few moments, she started screaming and asking God for help. Tessa's death became a heartbreaking challenge for her whole family. They found her body just 300 yards from the bar where she spent time before she disappeared and just 20 yards from where her friend Riley last saw her. It raised a lot of questions about the work of the police. After all, her body was a couple of blocks from the bar all this time. However, after Anne and Christine found Tessa's body, an anonymous police source provided the press with new information. Allegedly, Kess advertised her intimate services via the internet and worked in a strip club. The grieving mother said Toronto police didn't do enough to search for Richie because they assumed she was an escort. It was horrifying to read that. Hermiston replied angrily at what police sources told the media after her body's discovery. She was not making a living in the sex trade industry. It's a blatant lie. They leaked that so it would look like she lived a high-risk life and was in a laneway with somebody. And it wasn't their fault. Although Tess did work as a waitress at a strip club, she quit less than 2 weeks after they hired her. As for intimate services advertisement, it was just an account on a dating site. Even though they had found Richie's body, there was no explanation for what happened to her. Police did not initially suspect foul play, but the homicide unit eventually took over the case after an autopsy revealed she had died of neck compression. Moreover, they found seminal fluid on the girl's clothes and saliva on her bra. After some tests, they found traces of male DNA. Thus, the police finally started searching for a suspect. Considering Riley's testimony, the detectives were trying to figure out the identity of the guy the girls met that night. After all, he was the person Tess stayed with after Riley went home. The police turned to CCTV footage to learn more about that night. This video shows Tess and Riley leaving the bar and going towards the hot dog vendor's cart. There were also CCTV cameras on the building close to where Brazo found the body. After analyzing the recordings, the police saw Tess and her new acquaintance walking hand in hand up the gravel driveway. According to the information voiced by the police, the camera captured Tess and this unknown man at 4:14 a.m. The following recording, taken 46 minutes later, shows the guy leaving the place alone. Tess never appeared in the footage again. Therefore, the police believe this man was the main suspect in the Tess Richie case. On December 10th, during a press conference, the Toronto police published pictures of this man taken with the help of a video surveillance system. They hoped someone would recognize him. The pictures, taken by an ATM camera, were of poor quality. An ATM was next to the place where Richie bought hot dogs. In the evening of the same day, the police discovered the identity of this man. Oddly enough, after seeing the published images, the man called the police station himself. "I'm the guy in the photo," he said. The person who was with Tess that night was 21-year-old Kalen Schlatter. In the fall of 2017, Schlatter was 21 and living with his parents and younger brother at their North Toronto home. He had completed a year of postgraduate study as a car mechanic and worked with his dad in construction. Schlatter, his parents, and one of his lawyers went to the police station where he briefly spoke with detectives but refused to testify. His parents brought some food and a bottle of water for their son. In the end, they provided police with some crucial evidence. While still at the police station, Schlatter threw an empty water bottle into a trash can. The police promptly seized it and sent it for forensic medical examination. It took some time, but eventually they determined that the DNA sample on the bottle and DNA samples extracted from seminal fluid and saliva found on Tess Richie's body belonged to the same person. Police planned an undercover operation to monitor Schlatter for several weeks, but the DNA results accelerated the process. Schlatter was arrested around 11 p.m. on February 4, 2018, after watching the Super Bowl with his family at the Cineplex Cinemas Queensway in Etobicoke. They took him to 13 Division and placed him in a holding cell at 3:19 a.m. on February 5th. 2 other men were locked in holding cells on either side of him. Schlatter had no idea both were undercover cops, and that he was about to give them an abundance of evidence. The 3 men sat in separate nondescript holding cells with a combination toilet and sink as well as a bed. Schlatter was locked in the cell between the 2 cups with all 3 men facing the same wall. None of them could see each other, but that didn't stop them from talking for hours. Schlatter told these policemen about his passion for card games and his ability to seduce women. According to him, he has slept with more than 40 women, even though he was only 21 years old. However, he did not mention that he liked both men and women. As it turned out later, Schlatter did not meet Tess and her friend Riley on the street. He was in the same bar as them. That's where he first noticed them. This recording was made shortly before security asked Tess and Riley to leave the bar. Here's Riley, and here's Tess, and this is Schlatter. Schlatter also told undercover officers about Tess. At first, he said that she was alive when he left. Shortly after, Schlatter added that something could have happened because alcohol clouded his mind. He thought he was not capable of it. The police charged Kalen Schlatter with taking the life of Tess Ritchie, but of course, he denied his guilt. In June 2018, 2 police officers, Alan McCullough and Michael Jones, were charged with 2 counts of misconduct for neglect of duty under Ontario's Police Services Act. According to the notice of hearing, they allegedly failed to thoroughly search the adjoining property or immediate area, interview neighbors, and notify a supervisor. If they had followed protocol, Christine Hermiston stated, they would have found her. She was lying just around the corner. Despite all this, both officers remained working in the police, but received penalties. As for Kalen Schlatter, during the 7-week trial held in 2020, his defense tried to prove his innocence, arguing that someone else could have approached the stairs where Tess was lying by climbing over the fence on the other side of the building and thus remain invisible to the cameras. The lawyers even gave the name of another suspect, but the police thoroughly checked and interrogated this person, finding no evidence linking him to Tess's death. DNA evidence pointed to only one person, Kalen Schlatter. Schlatter was a slight man who appeared soft-spoken in court. He said he has a speech defect that causes him to slur his words and stutter sometimes. Trying to explain the presence of his DNA on Tess's belongings, he said she offered him to hide from prying eyes. At 4:02 a.m., Tess Ritchie ordered an Uber. The driver arrived at the pickup point at 4:14 a.m., but Tess wasn't there. Instead of letting Ritchie meet her Uber driver, Schlatter again approached her. They sat down on a bench at the corner of Church and Dundonald. Tess seemed a bit more upset from the argument, so I walked over to her to check if she was all right, Schlatter said. He said it was Ritchie who asked him to sit and talk. It's impossible to corroborate his account, as there is no sound on any security video from the area. Schlatter testified Ritchie was bummed about her breakup, so he started talking about the dissolution of one of his previous relationships to make her feel better. She listened intently, he said, and even declined a phone call during their conversation. It was a lie. The police examined Tess' mobile phone records and discovered no one had called her during their conversation. Later on, she asked if it's okay if she kisses me, Schlatter said. We stand up and give each other a hug and kiss. These words could not be confirmed either since there weren't any kisses on the CCTV footage available to the police. According to Schlatter, Ritchie asked him to follow her to the driveway at 582 Church Street and down into the property's outdoor stairwell. The prosecution considered these words a lie because at that time, the Uber driver was waiting for Tess. They suggested that Schlatter offered to escort Tess to her car, but he was planning something completely different. We will never know what Kalen Schlatter told Tess Ritchie as they walked up Church Street to convince her to walk into the dark at 4 a.m. with a man she just met. Schlatter claimed that he and Tess went down the stairs and started kissing. He wanted more, but Tess said they couldn't go any further. According to Schlatter, they kissed for a long time, which resulted in him ejaculating into his pants. After that, he invited Tess to his house, but she refused and said he could leave, which he did. Schlatter continued insisting Tess was alive when he left. It is important to note that all of the above was Schlatter's story, which the police could not verify. Only 2 people knew the truth about what happened that night. One of them was already dead. The prosecution's witnesses at the trial were Riley, a friend of Tess, and Michelle Teep, a woman with whom they talked that night. They both identified Schlatter. Schlatter not only spilled his guts to 2 undercover cops, he allegedly confided crucial details to a cellmate when they were at a Toronto detention center for roughly 2 months in 2018. The man, who can only be referred to as ES because of a publication ban, has a criminal record spanning decades, including several break-and-enters and a domestic assault. The informant said he initially felt sorry for Schlatter as he was a young man in jail for the first time. That's why ES invited him to share his cell while the 2 were in protective custody. But over time, ES soured on his new cellmate. Schlatter would cry himself to sleep at night because he didn't want to do time and because he missed his mommy. And yet he showed no remorse about Richie's death, ES said. He said Schlatter told him about his kiss with Richie and that he lost control when she said she didn't want to go any further. He couldn't stop and strangled Tess with a scarf. In court, Schlatter flatly denied that those conversations took place. His lawyer called ES a manipulative pathological liar. Putting aside all the testimony and relying only on physical evidence, one can conclude that someone strangled Tess Ritchie and only one person's DNA was on her clothes, Kaylin Schlatter. In her closing address to the jury, defense lawyer Lydia Riva portrayed Schlatter as a harmless kid and an innocent young man. As hard as it might be to accept and as uncomfortable as it might make us feel, the criminal justice system can get it wrong, Riva said. Mr. Schlatter was an easy target. He is easy to blame. On March 23, 2020, the jury found Schlatter guilty. The judge sentenced him to life imprisonment with the right to request parole after 25 years. The trial was heartbreaking for Richie's mother, sisters, and other supporters who were at times reeling and crying in the courtroom. While they now have some of the answers they craved for so long, their lives are forever changed. Evil not only took Tess that night, it sentenced her surviving family to a cruel and painful future while robbing the world of so much love and potential, said Richie's sister, Verena. Tess was the heart of my family, and we will forever be incomplete. In June 2020, Tess Ritchie's family sued Schlatter, the police, and others because of the psychological devastation they experienced after Tess's death. Do I want to just go in the house and hide and let it go? Absolutely. But can I? Absolutely not. I can't, because I can't get it out of my head that they let her lay there for 4 days, said Christine Hermiston. That image is seared in her mind forever, Hermiston said. That in that she should not have needed to travel from her home in North Bay, Ontario to Toronto to do the job of the police. Tess was the glue of the family and her death has torn everyone apart, her mother said. We have trouble looking at each other. We feel like we all let Tess down. We feel a lot of guilt. And that's why we're continuing to fight on behalf of Tess, because we're not going to let her down again. They are seeking a total of $20 million in damages, including punitive damages. There was anticipation in Iowa about what the coming decade would hold, as there were only a few weeks remaining in 1979. With the expansion of equal rights and the advent of daring fashion trends, the 1970s had been a lively decade for the state. Michelle Martinko, a senior in high school, embodied what it meant to be a teenager at that time with her blonde hair pulled back and her fashion-forward looks. The 18-year-old was always up for trying anything new and had a promising future. She lived in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, together with her parents, Albert and Janet, and her older sister Janelle. Michelle was often referred to as a miracle child because her parents had her 14 years after her elder sister. Janelle was born. Her parents, Albert and Janet, had undergone series of miscarriages before she came into their lives. For this fact, Michelle was pampered and enjoyed the luxury of having everything she wanted. Michelle Martinko attended Kennedy High School, where she excelled academically and was well-liked. She had been a choir singer and a cheery member of the twirling team. She also participated in theatrical plays and intended to enroll in Iowa State University, where she could study interior design. On the evening of December 19, 1979, Michelle went to a choir supper at a local hotel. When done around 6:30 p.m., she asked Jane Hansen, a close friend and fellow twirler, to join her for a ride to the mall, but Jane rejected the offer, saying she still had schoolwork to finish. Michelle, however, drove her parents' tan 1972 Buick to the Westdale Mall, where she wanted to buy a winter coat. The mall had only been open for 2 weeks, but she already adored the stores. Dressed in a black dress, black tights, heels, a waist-length white and brown fur jacket, was observed looking around and chatting with people she ran into at the mall. While at the mall, Michelle ran into a friend and confided in her that she felt she was being followed. She thought it could be because she was carrying a lot of cash with her. Her friend, however, reportedly reassured her that she didn't see anyone attempting to follow her and that she should hide her money away from the public eyes. Attempting to push the unsettling idea from her mind, finished her shopping and made her way back to her car. Unfortunately, her suspicion was right after all because someone opened the door as she was getting into her car, knocked her over and attacked her. Michelle tried her hardest, but she was unable to physically defend herself. When Michelle's parents discovered she hadn't come back home, it was late. At 2 in the morning, they reported her missing to the police. Roughly 2 hours later, police discovered her parents' Buick parked in the northeast corner of the mall's parking lot. As they drew nearer to the car, they could see through the frosted windows that someone was slumped inside. Opening the car, they discovered Michelle curled up in the footwell of the passenger seat, covered in blood. She was dead. Michelle Martinko was discovered with around 29 stab wounds to her face and abdomen, in addition to other defensive wounds on her hands. The young teenager had lost a third of her blood. Medical examiner determined that a single stab to the heart was probably what caused her death. When the police arrived at the crime scene, they were unable to locate any other fingerprints apart from Michelle's. This suggested that the murderer was well prepared and had decided to put on gloves. Investigators surmised that the murderer's motivation was personal because no weapon was discovered at the scene, and Michelle was not the victim of a robbery since her purse and cash were untouched. Due to the defensive wounds on her hands, it is believed that Michelle may have been attempting to defend herself from being sexually assaulted. However, the medical examiner concluded that she was not sexually attacked. In order to get answers and clues, the blood scrapings discovered on Michelle's car's gearshift was sent for analysis. It revealed the presence of a male DNA. Additionally, the investigators had Michelle's dress tested in a lab. The male DNA profile on the gearshift and a spot of blood on Michelle's dress matched each other perfectly. Police made a request for public assistance because they had no further information. Every male Michelle knew from school was questioned, even her 2 ex-boyfriends who had alibis. Andy Seidel, one of Michelle's ex-boyfriends, acknowledged seeing her the night she was murdered, but his alibi was sufficient to exonerate him. Cedar Rapids, a small town, would not accept Andy Seidel's alibi as being true. They and Michelle's family strongly believed he had a hand in her death. Andy and Michelle had dated for 2 years before they broke up. Andy wanted commitment. Michelle was not having any of that. According to Michelle's family, after their breakup, Andy was said to have constantly stalked Michelle, monitoring her life as well as any new relationships she must have had. At Michelle's funeral, Andy was seen holding and hugging her corpse while he cried his eyes out and asked questions like, "Who did she love before she died? Was it me?" This scenario further made Michelle's family and the community suspect Andy as the culprit. However, there was not enough evidence to pin him to the crime. Andy Seidel left Cedar Rapids after graduating from high school and joined the Navy. He eventually underwent a DNA test in the future, and the results did not match the suspect's evidence discovered at the crime scene. In the months following Michelle Martinko's murder, numerous leads were pursued and hundreds of persons were questioned by the police, but they all came up empty. As her murder case dragged down, a $10,000 reward was offered to anyone who had a lead that could pinpoint the murderer. In June 1980, based on the descriptions provided by 2 witnesses, authorities created a composite sketch of the individual they thought was responsible for the killing. The sketch depicted a white man in his late teens or early 20s who was probably around 6 feet tall with dark curly hair. At first, tips came in their hundreds, then they fizzled out. In the months and years that followed, the police essentially implored the public to come forward with helpful information. Nobody had a stronger desire to see Michelle Martinko receive justice than her parents, Albert and Jeanette. As the homicide investigation stalled, Albert Martinko sued the owners and managers of Westdale Mall in the mid-1980s, alleging they had failed to provide reasonable security on the night his daughter was killed. The case was appealed all the way to the Iowa Supreme Court, where the judges decided in favor of Westdale Mall on September 17, 1986. Sadly, in 1995, Albert Martinko passed away, and in 1998, Janet Martinko followed without knowing or seeing their daughter's murderer. In subsequent years, a company that specializes in DNA phenotyping, which Cedar Rapids police defined as the method of determining physical characteristics and ancestry from unidentified DNA evidence, was later patronized by the investigators. Virginia Parabon Nanolabs was able to create a portrait of a person of interest, but this didn't help anything, and by 1986, Michelle's case became cold. In the year 2006, due to improvements in technology, police were able to collect the suspect's DNA. The suspect was believed to have cut his hand at the scene of the murder, perhaps as a result of Michelle's fierce resistance. He ultimately spilled blood upon the steering wheel. The police department contacted the public once more and requested any details concerning a person who had a cut on their left hand around the same time of Michelle's murder. In the 2 years that followed this development, the suspect pool was further reduced by the police. When investigators entered the killer's DNA into CODIS, a database of DNA from criminals who have been arrested, no hits were found. In 2017, Virginia Parabon Nanolabs, a company which specializes in DNA phenotyping, used just DNA clues about the killer's ancestry and facial features to produce further photos of the murderer. The pictures depicted a man with blonde hair and blue eyes, and they looked very different from the composite sketch from 1980. They also created rough estimates of the suspect's age in the years following the crime. A former classmate of Michelle Martinko said in a news conference when the new image was revealed that the face resembled another of their classmates, but that classmate had been investigated and cleared based on a DNA sample years earlier. In 2018, the DNA phenotyping business utilized the information it had gathered the previous year and submitted it into GetMatch, a genealogical database open to the public that has been used by law enforcement to crack other cold cases, most notably the one involving the Golden State Killer. One person who shared DNA markers with the murder suspect in the case of Michelle Martinko was found using GetMatch, and it was established that she was most likely the murderer's second cousin, once removed. For pairs of the woman's great-great-grandparents were used to build a family tree, and it was concluded that the killer was most likely a descendant from one of those couples. After speaking with members of 2 branches of the family tree who had undergone DNA testing, a Cedar Rapids police investigator ruled out those branches as housing the murderer. After getting in touch with someone from a 3rd branch, a DNA test revealed that they were the killer's first cousins. As a result, the suspects were reduced to a trio of brothers who had grown up in Manchester, Iowa. Investigators started monitoring the 3 brothers while also making covert attempts to gather their DNA. On October 29, 2018, an investigator saw Jerry Lynn Burns, one of the brothers, consume multiple sodas using a plastic straw. The investigator then took the straw after Jerry Burns threw it away and performed a DNA test on it. Test analysis ruled out the other 2 brothers as suspects, but the blood found on Michelle Martinko's dress matched the DNA for Jerry Burns' straw. Investigators spoke with Jerry Burns on December 19, 2018 at his place of business in Manchester, Iowa. He was forced to comply with a search order after he refused to voluntarily supply a sample of DNA. He also had his hands and arms checked for any possible scars from the alleged attack that night. Jerry Burns insisted he didn't know Michelle and wasn't present when she was murdered, although a detective later testified that he did not directly deny killing Michelle. Jerry Burns was unable to explain why his DNA would have been found at the scene of the crime. He showed almost no emotion during the interview, even when he was eventually informed he was being arrested. He frequently instructed investigators to test the DNA when questioned if he had killed anyone that night in 1979, even though the blood sample discovered at the crime scene and his DNA was a match. Jerry Burns was detained and charged with first-degree murder on December 19, 2018. which was precisely 39 years after Michelle Martinko's death. He entered a not guilty plea. Jerry Burns was a virtual ghost. There wasn't much information available about him. In Manchester, Iowa, a town of 5,000 people located approximately an hour north of Cedar Rapids, he was best known as a respected businessman leading a quiet life. He was raised there and earned his high school diploma from West Delaware in 1972. He was married to Patricia Burns in 1975. She, however, died by suicide in 2008. Jerry Burns is the owner of Advanced Coating Concepts, a powder coating company on Manchester's south side. He was 25 years old when he killed Michelle Martinko. According to investigators, there is no proof that Burns and Martinko were acquainted. Jeff Holst, an investigator with the Cedar Rapids Police Department, was tasked with searching the suspect's computers. In Burns' office computer, Jeff Holst discovered evidence of internet searches and activities involving blonde females, assault, rape, strangulation, murder, abuse, and rape of a deceased individual, and cannibalism. 2 years later at his trial, on February 24, 2020, after 3 hours of deliberation, the jury convicted Jerry Lynn Burns guilty of Michelle Martinko's first-degree murder. For first-degree murder, Iowan law stipulates a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Jerry Burns' counsel submitted a motion on May 29, 2020, requesting a new trial on the grounds that the judge erred in rejecting the application to suppress the evidence and that his constitutional and state rights had been violated. Finally, on August 7, 2020, Jerry Burns was given a life sentence without the possibility of parole. He, however, later filed a notice of appeal in September 2020. He is incarcerated at the Anamosa State Penitentiary at the moment. 31-year-old Claritha Gibbs lived in Fort Myers, Florida in 1984. She originally lived in Tampa, but moved to Fort Myers in 1979. Claritha fell on hard times and started working as a prostitute. At her work, she went by the name Coco. On June 26, 1984, Fort Myers police responded to a call of shots being fired in the area of Palm Beach Avenue and Lincoln Boulevard. They found Claritha's body at 2831 Lincoln Boulevard. She had been fatally shot. At the crime scene, they found a rag with the suspect's DNA, but at the time, DNA testing was not common or very advanced. Witnesses came forward and told police that they last saw Claritha entering a two-tone vehicle, possibly a pickup, just before hearing a gunshot. The driver was described as a white male in his 30s, with brown or dark blonde hair, a thin build, approximately 5 foot 10 inches tall with a pale complexion. Despite the detailed description of the suspect, investigators were not able to identify him. The case was revisited in a special report in September 1994 edition of the News Press about the 16 unsolved cases of prostitutes whose lives were taken in the Fort Myers area in the preceding 20 years. In January 2017, Fort Myers Police Department's cold case unit investigators submitted the DNA evidence they had of the suspect from the RAG to DNA Labs International for more testing. A full DNA profile of the suspect was obtained and entered into CODIS, the FBI's national DNA database, but it did not provide a hit to any known samples. In March of 2019, investigators contacted Parabon Nanolabs, asking for help in solving the case. Parabon then employed one of their services called Parabon Snapshot for development of a profile using genealogy research. Finally, on June 22, 2020, Parabon Nanolabs completed their report on the case. It indicated that the DNA profile was linked through genealogy databases to an individual identified as 65-year-old James Glenn Drennan. He lived in Okeechobee, Florida. Investigators then began to research James and found that he lived in Lee County, Florida, at the time of the crime. Fort Myers is in Lee County. Investigators had to make sure that he is the one that took Claritha's life. So on July 27, 2020, investigators combed James' discarded trash and obtained a sample of his DNA. The sample was then sent to DNA Labs International. It was a match for the DNA collected from the scene on the night Claritha's life was taken. On January 13, 2021, investigators contacted James in Okeechobee, Florida, and James then provided a statement where he admitted that he fatally shot Claritha. James said that he was working as an area mechanic and picked up Claritha to engage in her services. James claimed that she pulled a gun on him to rob him. They fought over the weapon and Claritha was shot during the altercation. According to James, he then fled the scene and threw the gun out the window of his truck. 5 days after confessing, on January 18, 2021, James passed away in his home. There's been no more information made public as to how he passed. His confession was enough for Fort Myers police to close the case. We'll never know what truly happened, though, on that fateful day. One of Claritha's surviving relatives, a sister named Cynthia Hampton, who lives in Cape Coral, Florida, was surprised when the police contacted her about the investigation. She said that it feels good to know now who took Claritha's life. The Fort Myers Police Department have issued a statement saying, "The case is an excellent example of good old-fashioned police work, combined with the advancements that technology can provide law enforcement." The Fort Myers Police Department and Chief Derek Diggs are committed to using any resource or technology available to solve our unsolved cases and bring justice to their families. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the depths of unsolved mysteries. Cold cases not only challenge our understanding of the past, but also ignite our curiosity and determination for answers. Remember to subscribe to stay updated on our latest investigations. And if you have any information regarding the cases we've covered, don't hesitate to reach out. Together, we can shed light on the shadows of the past and bring closure to those who seek it. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and never stop seeking the truth.